first talk. A lot of you already know this gentleman here. No throwing bad fruit at him, please. Just, you know, you might come again. This is Barry Tuck. He's going to give a talk tonight on allotment and on our show and other different things. So we'd just like to welcome Barry here.
Well, first of all, good evening everybody, and it's nice to see so many here. So the people who know me, there's a lot what don't, but I did judge your show this year, and I did have a word with Ray afterwards to say it might be a good idea to have an evening like this, purely and simply for the method which we use for judging, how we judge, why we judge, and to perhaps try and get you to grow better exhibits. Not to say that you don't grow good exhibits, but to get the show even better and nicer and greater. And it doesn't take a lot, because when you know all the ways and means of how we do it, but it's no good us judging one thing if you don't know what we're judging for. So this is the whole object of this evening, to explain to you how to present things, why we do it and how we do it. A little bit about myself. I was bred and born in Essex, right on the Suffolk border, which I lived there for a number of years. Then I moved to Dorset and lived there for 5 years, and I moved to the south of France, where I've still got some grapevines over there. So if you want to know anything about grapevines, don't ask me, because it's France and not England. I've never been a professional gardener. I've been interested in gardening since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, but I've always done gardening, but I've never been a professional gardener. I've always been in the motor trade for me sins, but there you go. I qualified as a judge a few years ago. I'm a member of the Royal Horticultural Society and the NVS, which is National Vegetable Society. I do a lot of work with schools because it's the next generation. And if we don't encourage children, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's still to this very day when I get asked at the school, at what time do you put the plastic bag on the lettuce? Because they don't know any different. The parents go out, they get a lettuce, they bring it home, and they don't know it's not grown in a bag. They've got no idea. So we try to do that, and I also do several disability schools. Now, you've got to have a tremendous amount of patience to do this, as you can probably well imagine. For us to fill a pot with compost takes us probably seconds. That might take a disabled person in a wheelchair an hour to do it, and another 10 minutes to clear it up afterwards. So you've got to have a lot of patience, but to see the looks on their face when you give them a bean to grow and they bring it back to you a month's time when it's a couple of inches high, the looks on their face, it's absolutely amazing. So it really does get to you, and it's a wonderful thing. I certainly enjoy doing it. Anyway, what I'm going to do tonight is enough of what I'm going to say. I'm going to go through first of all your schedule of what we had in your show this year. Now, I'll explain every class of what we're looking for in the class. Now, we have a system in a show where the first thing we do when we enter a show, we look for three things: pom-pom dahlias, sweet peas and rosebuds. Now, the reason being, a grower may put pom-pom dahlias in a show at 8 o'clock in the morning. By the time we get round to see it, it could be 12 or 1 o'clock. They're the three things will actually grow after they've been picked, and they're no longer the standard size which they should be when they're judged. So we always judge those first. We always do, some shows may have 3 stages of roses: a bud with colour, and then right up to a flower. So the bud would not be a bud after it's been in a room like this 4 hours. It would be more than a bud. The pom-pom dahlia would have grown over the 52. the measurement, and we put these through a ring, so we have calculated rings, so every judge carries them and every judge uses them, so we get the standardisation. And we will judge those three things first. We will then, after we've walked around the show, looking at the exhibits, if we say there is, for argument's sake, 12 raspberries, and I'll show you how we expect raspberries to be exhibited, that if there's 13 there, what do? NAS it? No, it's a village. I'm not going to put down on a sheet NAS, not according to schedule. So I would say to the steward or the secretary, there's 13 in there, there's not 12. And I'll walk away. Now if the raspberry fairy comes along after I've looked at it and one is that doesn't bother me. I can't do it. The secretary can. If there's one missing, this is when the problem starts, unless he's got a spare one in his pocket, which invariably he hasn't. But I still wouldn't NAS it. Not in a village show. In a big show you may be, because you've got to be a bit sterner. But in a village show, no, we wouldn't do it. And we certainly would never demoralise children's exhibits. Even if they were... You've got to be a bit careful when you come to things like maras, which are carved to make a dragon, and that's one by a 5-year-old. And this year I've had one where the father said, I cut my bloody finger doing that. Well, how would the child do it? That's what I'm saying. And you've got to be a bit... I can't go to the parent and say, that child's never done it. No, you've got to be sensible in the way you do it. So, the rules what we go by are the same rules what we go by from our book and our training, but we can alter things in a way that if there's only one exhibit, if there's only one exhibit of carrots, I don't necessarily, or any other judge, have to give that first because it's the only one. If that doesn't come up to the standard to be good, that's going to lower the whole classes right the way across. So therefore, depending on how bad or how good it is, if it's a decent one, yes, you're going to give it a first. If it's not good, then you're going to give it a second or a third, and we are quite justified in doing that, because that makes a bit of a mockery of the system. Now the other thing which we have to be very wary of, unlike the MVS when they judge, we are trained to do flowers. We don't know everything by any means, we can't, but we do have judges who we always specialise in certain things, what we grow. Those certain things, if somebody has got a problem with what they're growing, and they ask me and I haven't got the answer, I find out from a fellow judge the answer, and I come back to that person. Maybe a week, but I will definitely come, and we all do it, but we can't do everything. We are also trained by the WI for all the culinary stuff. We have to judge bread, scones, jams, Victoria sponges, cakes, pickles, everything what the WI. That's an 8-month course every week with the WI. So I love bacon, I love cooking. I've got 2 daughters who are chefs, and I'm a firm believer that if I come across a lady, I've got to be able to give a precise reason why her cake hasn't won. Now if I didn't know that, that's a bit naive of me to say to that lady, oh, that cake's not good enough. Well, what's wrong with it? I don't know, but it's not good enough. You've got to know these things. You know, some ladies do get a bit upset, especially if there's an awful lot of jams and stuff, but we have to do that. We also get trained, you can look through this book here, we have to judge from time to time at shows eggs. Now you think this up, how the devil do you judge an egg? Some shows do have eggs. Now we're trained by the Egg Marketing Board to judge eggs. Now we have we have to do this. Certain things which we have to specialise in, we're trained by the specialists. The only thing that we wouldn't do, we don't judge dahlias and chrysanthemums and roses under their own society rules. We judge them under the RHS rules. Now, to give you an idea that at some shows, a show not very far away from here 2 years ago, I had to do 32 different jams. Now, we know also, and it does happen at shows, where somebody will buy a pot of jam and they will remove the label and they will put it in. We know if it's homemade or whether it's factory made. We know that. It's ever so simple, but I'm not going to tell you how because you'll all know. But it's an easy one. The WI taught us that. I will go through the labelling system for pickles and jams a little later on, but we'll stick to what we're doing at the moment. When we come to things like bread, unless it actually says in the schedule tin baked or machine baked, it doesn't make any difference to us which way you do it. Whether you do it with gas, electric, it doesn't make any difference to us at all. If the schedule says a loaf of bread, then it's a loaf of bread. Now we always cut the bread down the middle, never from the side, because if it's not cooked, it's not going to be cooked in the middle, so we know. Now I had, again at this particular show, not very far away from here, last year, where a lady, absolute wonderful loaf of bread, it really was, and the smell, the texture, the colour, the taste, because we do taste them, absolutely wonderful. Till I start to cut through it, where I got so far and I couldn't go any further. And I thought, what has happened here? So I tipped it up, and it was, the mixing paddle was still in the bottom of the loaf. Now, I don't think the lady had any intentions of leaving it in there, but it didn't make any difference. The bread was absolutely superb. And I was there when the lady came in with her husband, and she said, oh look dear, she said, I've got first prize for my bread. And I went over to the lady, I said, is your bread? She said, yes. I said, when did you make it? Because we always say to people, make your bread 24 hours beforehand, so we can cut it and it's not hot, basically. So she said, oh, I made it last night. So I said, well, it's a very, very nice loaf of bread. I said, do you make it often? She said, yeah, I'm going to make another one tonight. She said, so when we get up in the morning, it's all done and ready for Sunday morning breakfast. So I turned the bread over and I said, you better take this with you. I said, because you won't be able to make it. And her face went bright red. You never seen a woman's bread in all your life. But it was funny. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, no, it's all right, you better take the paddle back with you. I said, because you won't be able to use your bread mixer. And at the end of the show, she came over to me, she said, would you like my bread? I said, I would love your bread. And she gave it to me. I said, you've taken the paddle out, haven't you? So it's things like that. We try to have fun, especially at village shows. Right, now let's get down to, always, as a warning to everybody who do any showing at all, always read your schedule, always, because if the schedule says when I get it 3 carats, I don't expect to see 2 and I don't expect to see 4 or 3. It's got to be what it says on here, right? If it's got 4 and the carrot fairy comes along, that's it, that's gone. But always read the schedule. Another word of warning, that if it says anything in here with stalks, always we judge them with stalks, and we expect you to put, say like raspberries, blackcurrants. People will put, especially raspberries, in a bowl. Well, we don't know if there's 12 in there, and we're certainly not going to tip them out. So always put them on a plate. Always put them so the stalks are facing the outside. Now, how do we quickly count 12 raspberries on a plate? Ever so simple. We put a pen at quart two and we count them right the way round to the next pen, and we can do that in seconds, and we know there's 12. The next thing is we have to pick the stalk up and we have to look at the berries at the bottom, the pips. If there's one which has got a fault, we then put that stalk facing the other way, so it's facing inwards. So after we've done the whole lot of the dishes on the show bench, we can go and say, well, that dish has got 4 bad ones, that one's got none, that one's got 6. So we were able to get first, second and third very quickly, and this is the way we do it. Invariably, exhibitors will also, if they've got a fault with a potato or something, they'll always put the potato face down so that we can't see the mark. But we pick the potato up, we have to. There are certain things which you need to know how to handle, especially when you'll bring them to a show. There is certain fruit which carry a glaze on them, special apples, and you also get things like a cabbage, especially a red cabbage. We all say stalk. The reason we say a stalk is that's not been bought or been cut from the field. The haze which is on it, if you pick the cabbage up or the fruit up like this, will be marked, and that's there on the show bench marked with fingerprints. So always handle a cabbage and a lettuce, anything like that, by the side. Pick it up like this. The apple you pick, or the fruit, you will pick it up like this and turn it. Not with the stalk that way, we do it sideways. To exhibit apples, you always need the core upwards, the stalk on a plate downwards, because if there's any infestation, that gets through the core end, so we know that right away. And as fruit growers, you know, if you know what varieties you got, we can't because there's thousands of them, thousands of different. But we know that within the region. I mean, probably a lot of you know that if you picked any apples at all and you shake them and you hear the pips, well, you know it's a pippin apple. Because not many people obviously ever know that, but that's how they get the name of pippin. There is certain things which has to be handled very carefully and very gently. You'll see at some shows, you were not here when I was doing the judging, but there's some things I will put gloves on for. The reason being that when I cut a cake, for argument's sake, I never cut it on the bench where it's been shown on a plate. I will take it off and put it on a separate table. Cut it, taste it and then put it back. Because somebody spent a great deal of trouble putting that on that plate and making it look nice. And if it's crumbs and jam and cream all over the place, it doesn't look nice. We always try and put things back the way we find them. If we pick up an exhibit, we will pick the card up, the number, with it. The reason being that if you've got 2 or 3 the same, you think, now, which one was that? If you're holding the card, you know that that exhibit has that card. And for quickness, if we think it's not good enough, we will turn the card over so we don't look at it again. We will put it back, but we will turn it over so that we then know first, second and third. When we're doing things like flowers, flower arrangement, we still get people who do a table arrangement about 2 foot high. Well, if you're having dinner with somebody and there's 4 of you sitting at a table and you've got to keep going like this to talk to them, that's not a table display, is it? So a table display we don't want to see any more than about 9 inches high. If it's a flower display, you will see that judges take them off the table and look at them on the floor. So we get we look at all angles as well. That way we can see the colour distribution, and always remember that when you do display flowers, it must have water. That's one of the things we check. If there's no water, we don't look at it. It must have water. So always remember to look at the schedule. That's the most important thing. Do your exhibit as per the schedule, because that is what we go by. Alright? Now, what we had first on your schedule last year was 3 carrots. Now, bearing in mind that not everything which is big is best. Unless you've got the heaviest cabbage, the heaviest marrow, that's different. Or the longest run of beans, it's different. But when you get 3 carrots, what we're looking for, and I'll give you, we have stumped and we have pointed to 2 different ones. So at your show you had 3 carrots, tops trimmed to 3 inches. Now we're not going to get a tape measure out and measure exactly 3 inches. We're not going to do that. That's being rather silly, isn't it? One might be 1/16 of an inch longer than the other. That's silly. So we will say yes, 3 inches. We like to see them complete with the taproot. So if you get 3 nice carrots, you want to see with the root on. Now sometimes you grow them in the garden. That's rather difficult. But for the ones who know how to grow carrots for shows, they don't grow them in the garden, do we? So you then try and do it with the taproot. Now, when I used to show mine, first of all, the pointage system, everything what we judge has got points on. Everything. So, first of all, advice to judges, which is our Bible, what we say here, condition is the most important. Now, when we say condition, we want a blemish-free, we want it in good condition. Now, if the condition we can do from 1 to 5 in points, 1 to 5. Now, the next thing we're looking for is uniformity. In other words, the same length, the same girth, and we will point them, if we don't want one shorter than the other or anything like that, on 4 points. Now, if you've got, the other thing is size. As we said, just because you've got 3 enormously long carrots, it don't mean to say that they're the best. You could have 3 short carrots and small ones, which are far better than the big ones, because it's more difficult to grow a big one than what it is a little one. Really. So that would then give us 3 points. The next thing would be shape. So we don't want one which is hit a stone and curled up. Most growers wouldn't put it in a show, but you'd be surprised. And the next thing is colour. Now, as you know, that the colour of a carrot, because it originated from Holland, is orange after the national colour of Holland, because the carrot was brought from Holland donkeys of years ago, which then makes us a total of 18 points. Now, if everything comes to all that, which is pretty rare in a village show, you might get it at a candy show or something like that, but you wouldn't get it in a, even I can't do it, and I've judged at county level, showing at county level. So we've got a 18. The only way you would, if you had a class where you have a tray of vegetables, you've seen shows where they will say 5 different vegetables. Now, it's the only thing that we cannot do if there's tables of vegetables. Sometimes that will say a basket of vegetables for effect, and they will have even things like shallots hanging down, they have garlic hanging down, and they will have things placed for colour, for the effect. We cannot pull a carrot out of that to see what that carrot's like. We can't pull that cabbage out to see what that cabbage is like, because if we pulled it out and are all collapsed in a big heap, who's going to get the trouble for it? We would. So therefore, we've got to go by the looks of it. All right? So if a leek is dirty, for argument's sake, at the bottom of the roots, we're not going to be able to see it. But we've got to accept it that we're looking at for display, for effect. Now, when we go back to carrots, carrots need to be clean. Now, the easiest way to clean a carrot, I know you're going to laugh now, and I did it last week for a class at college, was with a cotton bud. Now, the worst pointage which you will get deducted, it's easy to get hold of a carrot and put it in water and clean it, ever so easy. But it's not so easy to get where the leaves come out with the stalks around the top of the carrot. That's the bit what shows up very, very clearly. The only way you get it out successfully is with a cotton bud. Once you've done that, that carrot is then clean. May not be as clean as the next one, but it's clean. We don't want to see any yellow on the top where it's been subject to the light. And that's very, very difficult to achieve. And we certainly don't want to see any fly. But there, you're not going to get too many exhibitors, hopefully, what would put 3 carrots in with fly. Right? So, we don't want to see any markings on it, and after all said and done, we will then judge on the condition of those 3 carrots with trims, and that's the pointage system: condition, uniformity, size, shape and colour. That's how we judge carrots. Alright? So it should be fairly clear, I think, how we achieve the first, second and third and sometimes fourth in a show with carrots. Right, the next thing is courgettes. Now, try and remember with a courgette, you want young, tender fruits of good uniform, shape and colour, approximately 150 millimetres in length. Now, if it's 145 or 160, who's going to worry? As long as they're the 3 are the same. There is ways of earning extra points with courgettes, which is not the easiest thing to achieve, but to grow them and show them complete with the flower. As you'll all know, if you grow courgettes, it's a very difficult thing to put them on a plate complete with the flower, but you do score extra points for that. The same as what you do with a cucumber, but again, very difficult. So we want them 150 millimetre in length, if they're short or long, as long as they match. Now, it doesn't matter if they're yellow, it doesn't matter if they're green, because who says a courgette must be green? I could do any colour now, it doesn't make any difference. As long as it's a courgette, it's all right. And 35 millimetre in diameter, right? That's the measurement you've got to go by. Again, you don't want to put 3 like miniature marrows, do you? So, really it's being sensible, isn't it? Now the round ones, which we're now seeing, have got to be 75 millimetres round diameter. So if you're putting 3 courgettes which are round, which are coming on quite popular now, any colour will do, providing they are all the same colour, all the same cultivar. You can't have one which is yellow and one which is red and one which is orange. They've all got to be as near as down the same colour. And the fruits, we know how fresh they are. Because if you cut a marrow or a courgette, the moment you cut it, you know that the stalk, and you need about ½ inch stalk on if you can. You'll see they're still wet one which has been picked a long time will be dry and not fresh, as we call it. And there mustn't have any pet damage or any pest disease. So really, a courgette's a relatively easy thing to put on a plate, but not quite so easy to grow to that standard. Some people might find it hard. Now it says, advice to judges, specimens may be shown with or without flowers attached. So if you haven't got the flowers, it doesn't mean to say they're thrown out, but if you've got 3 on the bench which have got flowers attached, you'll get a damn sight more chance of winning the first prize if it's a good one, or a good set, than what you have if you didn't have it. Right? So, you've got, again, condition 4 points, uniformity 3, size 2, shape 3, giving a total of 12 points. Which, again, the reason we do this, because if they're in a basket for display, or so many vegetables, different vegetables have different point systems. So if you want to get a good trade going, you're going to try and grow and exhibit the highest pointed vegetables you can grow. Yeah? Because again we have a table where we go, something we'll say like the City of Leicester show, where they take it very, very seriously. We would point each individual vegetable on that tray, each individual vegetable. And if something has got a pointage system of 15, somebody's not going to put something which has only got 10 in. Some vegetables have got more point system than anything. And always remember, if you're putting flower display in, your highest pointed flower is an orchid, which is the only flower which carries 30 points. It's the only flower. There's no other flower carry that amount of points, and that's an orchid. So that's always worth remembering if you're doing a big display to get the maximum amount of points. Right? Now, the next thing was beans. Now, when you have your show, you're not going to have broad beans, are you? In fact, we very, very rarely see broad beans in a show because it's always late in the season. Now, with runners, we'll go to runners first. Runners and French have got 2 different categories. One is obviously longer and shorter. Now, you will also, we'll say, I think you put 5, some will have 6. Again with stalks, must have stalks. We will break one to see if it's woody. Now we have an option to break any one out of that. In your case it's 5, most are 6, but it doesn't make a difference. But we don't get a hold of it like that and break it. We get hold of it like that and break it. So it breaks at the weakest point, which is the middle. And that would determine to us if it's woody or not. It always goes back in exactly the same place as it came from. But to exhibit runners, you need the stalk and the toe all facing the same way. Now you can put them, some people now put them on black cloth to bring out the greenness of the colour. It doesn't matter how you display it. The length, it can be 2 foot long. It can be a foot long, doesn't make any difference. There's no, unless it's a class where it says the longest runner bean. But with runners, no. Some small ones are better than big ones, depending on what variety. But again, always have them displayed on a plate with the stalk and the foot facing the same way, not all ziggy-zag. As straight as possible. If you find that the shower's on the Saturday and you've got some lovely runner beans and they're not all perfectly straight, the trick is put them in water for a couple of hours, a bowl of water, and then wrap them in tea towels overnight. They will straighten out. Right? That they will straighten out in tea towels as long as they're wet. You can do the same with French beans, of course. If, let me just check with the French beans finish up with 15 points, runner beans finish up with 18. Right, so if you're going to do a basket of vegetables, what are you going to put in? You're going to put runners in and not French, because the point system is more. Exactly the same, condition, uniformity, size, shape and colour. Snap one pod from each exhibit to determine freshness. That will tell us how fresh they are and how stringy they are. We don't have stringy beans, do we? Now you would do the same with a French bean, and the defects would be pods that are misshapen, dull, pale, tough, stringy, or have any prominent seeds, as the same as how we judge a runner bean. We don't want to see the protruding bean in the bean. If you run your finger down, you can feel the beans. When they're in season and there's judging time, you don't very often see it, because at the end of the season, when they run the seed, of course you're going to see it. So try and pick beans, and don't worry if they're not straight. Straighten them out yourself. Defy nature. There is other ways you can do it. You can grow them straight, you can grow them long by making a frame up, but that's for the professionals and the cheats. I've done it. But it's not cheap, it's the way to grow a long one. Now, as I say, you won't see many broad beans. In fact, I don't think I've only judged broad beans at shows. We do it at college for the students, but we don't see it at shows. Again, it doesn't make any difference. We know that there's French beans now and maxi beans, which are different colours. They're mauve now, like a lot of vegetables. And apparently, from what I can gather through the history of this, that French beans was the first vegetable to become a different colour. In other words, it's purple. And the first company to achieve it was King's, Coggeshall in Essex. And they did it to aid the picking of them, because they're so close to the ground and they're behind leaves that they couldn't see them. So when they used to pick them, they used to lose them, forget about it a lot of them. So they devised this variety, which are purple, and it doesn't make any difference whether they're green and purple as long as they're not mixed up. But it doesn't matter what the colour is, right? So you can put in any colour you like, as long as they're straight. And the same laws will say of judging comes under exactly the same as runners as what it do with French. So there's no difference. The next thing is we went on to onions, were next dressed. Now, large onion variety. Now, how large is a variety of onion? This is where we're going to probably sort the schedule out. That might be a little bit easier. We have the four categories of onions. We have a shallot, which is a pickling onion, which must not exceed 1 inch and 1/8. That's a pickling. So if it says 8 pickling onions, we put them through a ring, and if they don't go, we don't force them through, we get a hold of the top and we put the ring over the onion. We don't put the onion through the ring, because damage, so therefore we will do it that way. If it says 8, we expect to see 8. Invariably it's 9. They have 8 around the outside and 1 in the middle. They do it with sand. That's the nice way of doing it. So we've got the pickling onion. We've then got the shallot. Now we've got two weights of shallots. We've got 250 grams, which is the old 8 ounces. Now, we don't say that you've got to tie these now. If you want to tie them to make them look nice, you can. But you certainly wouldn't get NAS if they weren't tied, put it that way. If there's one next door to it which is tied and a spent of onion, of course it would. But you can twist the tops, because with a small onion it's very difficult to tie them up, whether you do it with raffia or whether you do it with paper. I've seen people do it with insulation tape. They look absolutely dreadful, but they do it. They stand them in all sorts of rings now, which is a nice way of displaying them. These big curtain rings, what you get, you can get them reasonably cheap. The onion stands in it, which looks nice. You can get them put them in sand, or you can be very clever and use part of a toilet roll, cut that about an inch high and put it into there. That's not a problem. But always remember the way they're displayed makes a lot of difference, because onions are one of the highest pointed things. So we go then from shallots to 250, which is the old 8 ounce. Then we go 250 and over. Then you have another category where it says large onions. Well, at what stage do you say 250 as a large onion? So what we say, or what the best way to work out the schedule, as an onion up to 250 grams. Anything over is another category. I mean, I grew one this year, £9 4 ounces. It would be silly to put that in the category of the 250 onion, wouldn't it? 8 ounces. Now, when it says in some schedules, onions grown from sets, an onion grown from seed, how do we tell? How do we tell if an onion's grown from a seed or set? We know when we want to grow big onions, we will get bigger onions grown from seed, putting them in about Christmas time. Easiest thing, if you pick up an onion on a show bench and you turn it upside down, if it's a set, it will have a ring in the root, because that onion's been grown and then laid to rest for 20 weeks, whether it's heat treated or whether it's left dormant. That's your set. Now when you plant that set, that then goes into an onion. When you look at an onion which is grown from seed, that hasn't got a ring on it, because it's a one onion growth, where a set, it's got a circle in it. So if you put some onion sets in the ground, whether they be red or white, doesn't make any difference, and you pull that onion up and you look carefully at the root, you will find, if it's a set, there'll be a ring in the bottom. That is the original growth of the set when it's been dormant. So in other words, that's an onion and it's grown again. So the original onion growth is the ring which is still there. That's the easiest way for us to identify it. If the schedule says grown from seed, we've got to be sure it is grown from seed, but if it just says onion, we've got to go. Now, as you know, the guys who do grow big onions, there's lots of variants now on the market, and the seeds. If you want to grow a big onion for show purposes, you've got to start thinking about it in December at least. I've got my seed now ready to put in. But it's not just the warmth you want, don't forget you want the light. So you've got to then put artificial light in, where if you leave it another 6 weeks, or into part of February, you can, when the nights are starting to get a little bit more, you've got more of a chance of not spending so much money on electric for artificial light. You can't just put a bulb there, it's got to be the nearest thing to daylight, to get your big stuff. And you can, with certain varieties, if you want to grow big onions, grow them in a very large pot. And that's quite fun doing that. Quite fun. If it says trimmed, they're going to be trimmed. A lot of shows now are putting a class in onions, in other words, onions straight out the ground, still with the green on, but the roots are clean. You don't want loads of dirt, but you can do that. Untrimmed onions or undressed onions, whichever the category you like to put them under. But certainly if you make it as easy as possible on your schedule with the weights and the sizes, people know what they're doing and they can abide with it. We know what we're doing rather than try and mix different things up. It makes things much easier, much cleaner, and hopefully you better yourself each year by year. So we've done the what you did put down was 5 match lots. Now I suggest another year to that lady that she probably...
Not me anymore.
Oh right, well whoever's going to take over, that you increase that. The reason I'm saying that, because 5 match lots is the easiest thing to do. When you want to get 8 and 9, that's not quite so easy, right? The next thing was, is anybody happy with the onions? Anything you want to know? Well, you can ask me all these things afterwards.
We're doing some French shallots,
Yeah.
big banana shaped
Yeah.
shallots.
Put them in now.
Yeah.
Hope you've got them in now.
Well, they don't match this criteria of being less than 1 and an 8.
There's a lot of things. The reason being they've got to be classed as a shallot. They're not an onion.
Yeah, they are, aren't they, shallots?
They're a shallot. So therefore, unless there's a category for shallots, which is other than pickling onions, that is quite acceptable for them to go in. I've grew some this year. Judges hate them because they're not one thing or the other.
They're good to cook them, though.
They're lovely. I had one with a wild rabbit the other night, absolutely gorgeous with pork around it. But no, you should put them in now. I put mine in last week because they're a long growing onion. But yeah, ever so good. There's a banana one and what they call a tulip one now as well, which is red. Very strong, very hot, absolutely lovely cooking shallot. Collection of 5 different fruit and vegetables. Now, one of each. There again, you will put in, once you know, I think Ray have one of our books, don't you, Ray? The Bible,
Yes.
which will give you all the characteristics, what you need to know in that. You want to go for the flowers which have got the highest amount of points, the fruit which has got the highest amount of points, but you also want the condition which has got, because don't forget, they will probably be open to more thorough examination than what a basket would for effect. So therefore we would examine them probably a bit like we would if that was on a class. Exactly the same rules apply. When obviously I told you about apples, you show the apple with the core downwards, the stalk downwards, sorry, so the core is upwards. The reason being is any mites in it, and I would expect in a basket for them to be exactly the same thing. Pears, unfortunately, you can't, you've got to lay them down so they won't stand up. Right? Now, I know down here there isn't, but you may one day come across it. You've got to know when you're putting in fruit if it's stoned or non-stoned, because there's different categories. Stone fruit, I come across this year where somebody grew some absolute wonderful figs, but unfortunately figs are not stone fruit. But they didn't know that, so the fig fairy came along and moved them to the section of no stone section. But the man who put them in didn't know, but no, that was all sorted out. So the category would be exactly the same, but you pick one of everything and do it that way. The next thing is potatoes. Now, everybody assumed the biggest potatoes are going to win. No. The size of a potato, what we're looking for, is between 175 and 225 grams each potato. In other words, it should go in the palm of your hand. Ideally a shape like a kidney, but not all potatoes grow like that. But we're looking for a potato which, ideally if you had a plate of 6 or whatever you've got 3, we would want them to be all the same size. We don't weigh them. If that came to the critical point that there was so many on the bench and we needed to get a real good point, then we would consider weighing them, but generally we wouldn't. But that's the ideal size potato, between 175 grams and 225 grams. Now, when it says in the schedule white potatoes, white means white with no other markings on whatsoever. So if you talk on terms of different varieties of potatoes, Picasso, Winston, Kestrel, stuff like that, which have a marking on them, they cannot go into the white potato. They are coloured. I know they're not red like Desiree, but they're still a coloured potato. There is rules afoot at the moment that there's going to be 3 now. When it's coming out, we don't know, but there is so much going on now with potatoes that they're going to make a category which is simply all white. They will have a category which is simply red, and they will have another category which will be a white potato which has got markings in, which is acceptable. That's the easy way to do it. But you see, we're now going on to purple potatoes, we're going on to yellow potatoes, we're going on to red potatoes, so they are classed as colours. The same things apply: size, condition. We don't know warts on them. We want them clean, exactly the same as everything else what you show. Never be afraid. Don't rub them with a scouring pad. Do them with a sponge. Make sure that they're dry before you bring them, because wherever you put them, the water will come out and that leaves a puddle. Not a puddle, but water. Potatoes are one of the easiest things to exhibit, providing that, as I say, the grower doesn't always think that we pick them up from the bench, but we pick them up like this and we turn them and we put them back. But if the marking is on one of the bottom of the potato, we will put that marking back, facing down. We don't leave it up so all the public can see it, because that's not a fair thing to do. We always leave things the way the exhibitor has brought it to the table. As I say, potatoes, it doesn't matter. If they're big, that doesn't mean to say that big is beautiful. Big can be a no-goer. Unless it says large potato, and if it says large potato, you can have any size. But if it's a normal potato, they would be, as I say, with that category. So we've got beetroot. Now, beetroot, ideally, the size of a beetroot should be the same size as a tennis ball for judging purposes. If they're big, we don't want to see no markings on them, we don't want no warts. Some will, schedules will say with tops, others will say without tops. Now, there is, we have an option now of cutting a beetroot open, where before that was always compulsory. It's no longer compulsory. The only time it will become compulsory to do, or at least we would do it, would be if it's a close show of how good these 6 lots of beetroot are. But if we would do it, we would do it long before we got to them. The reason being that they're so messy when you cut the wedge out, they bleed. And the whole reason for doing that, because if you ever look at the inside of a beetroot, you will see there's white rings in. That would distinguish how old the beet is, how tough it is. That tells us if it's been in the ground a long time. It may be a variety what don't grow big. But an ideal exhibition is a beetroot the same as a tennis ball. Now when you come round to the long ones, which very, very rarely, they're a high pointed system because they're very difficult to grow. to grow to uniformity exactly the same size. Very rarely, I think I've not seen any more than about 4 in shows all the years I've been judging, so they're very rare. But a good beetroot grown other than round would beat a round one without a doubt, because the pointed systems are that much greater. Yeah. But that's the reason why we cut the beetroot. But I think I've done about 2 this year. They're messy, white tablecloth plates. They're, you know, don't need it there. Collection of fruit and vegetables. Well, 1 flower, 1 vegetable. That's easy. Everything is judged exactly the same as what you would with a flower. We won't be able to go through how we would judge dahlias and chrysanthemums with the dwelling of the face towards you, what angle it's got to be. But if you were going to do that sort of thing, we'd be here for a week. And it's taken me 4 years to do what I do now, training, so you couldn't do it. You've got to specialise in things. We always carry this around with us, but if you're going to do a flower, do the best you possibly can. That's what we ask. You don't want one which is full of bits and pieces and wildlife, and no, you don't need that. The same with fruit, exactly the same. Cucumbers with stalks, well, we know what that is. Heaviest cabbage, well, that's simple. We know what that is. Now, heaviest marrow. If you had a schedule, or class in your schedule, of 2 matched marrows, which a lot of shows do have, it's very difficult to get 2 marrows exactly the same length, exactly the same width, the same weight. It's very difficult. I can only say that the best marrows to grow for shows is table dainty, because they don't grow any more than 1 foot long, and you can bet your boots that if you took 2 off your vine and you put them next door to each other, they will stand up against any marrow. Now, if cutting the stalks, exactly the same, you need to have them fresh. We know how fresh a marrow is. We want to see it the same colour all the way round. Now, you as gardeners, you've got to be very careful to turn them. You can put silver paper under them, you can grow them on a board, but turn them every other couple of days, a little bit at a time, to get them the same colour all the way around, because the whiteness at the bottom is only shielding from the sun. If you cut a marrow, get it in your hand and tap it like that. You'll see me do it at shows. Now, by the sound of that, if it's hollow, we know how fresh it is, because a marrow's got a great water content in. And if it echoes, we know the water's been absorbed and gone, so therefore it's a dull sound. That's the way we can tell, by the sound of a marrow when we knock it. Like that. So we get an echo from it. Trickery, I know, but that's the way we know. Beans, well, we've done that. Always try and get the best you possibly can and the cleanest. We go for cleanliness. That's the most important thing. Conditioned, get them everything exactly the same as you can, as near as you can. I'm not saying that if you've got 2 carrots and one hasn't got a root on that you shouldn't show it. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying, if that's the best on the bench, that would get the best. What other things can I tell you? Tomatoes, well, self-explanatory with tomatoes. If they're cherry tomatoes, they've got to be all the same colour. They've got to have stalks on. They've got to be the same colour and the same variety, obviously. Again, by the stalk we can tell how fresh they are. If they've been picked a week, you've only got to look at them and that shows it mine. Is there any questions anybody want to ask me?
When you were judging our show, you said to me that red beans wouldn't score as highly as green beans. So if we were going to show Belotti beans
Yeah.
in our bean class, generally
The
speaking,
condition would be very important. Now the reason you get this, you always get more defects with coloured ones than what you do green ones, if you notice. They're misshaped, they're not a standard colour, they're all sorts of horrible shapes, some of them. So therefore a green one, if a green one is shaped like that, that wouldn't get anywhere either.
Mhm.
So there's not a possibility that that would never win, but a green one will always go over the top of a white or a purple one, or a blue one.
So if we wanted to do Belotti beans, would you recommend a second class? So
Yeah.
Have a green bean class.
Yeah,
and a Belotti.
well, put it under coloured, that's the easiest. You don't have to identify, just put it under colour, because there's different seed merchants will do a different bean but the same colour.
Okay.
Otherwise you'll be restricted to
Yeah.
what name you put it under. Just put it under coloured, that's the easiest.
Smashing. Thank you.
But it's, there's so many things now which, there's certain things which we never seem to judge. Very rarely do we see sprouts, unless they're bought. Oh yes, we know the tricks. It does happen. There's all sorts of things people will try on. I'm not saying it's devious, but very, very quickly, if there's any ladies who do jam making, always, I don't know if you've got a class for preserves, have you? I don't think so.
They're pickles.
Yeah, you have pickles. But if you go on to jams, always remember that whenever you put pickles, preserves, chutneys, jams, you must not, that would be NAS, because it's illegal, to put it into a jar with a name on, or the top. So in other words, if you've got a Robinson's jam pot, and you sterilise it, and they all look very nice, and all written across at the top as Robinson's jam, that is illegal. They could sue you, not me, but sue you. So therefore, make sure that whenever I handle jam, when I look at the fruit, we want with raspberries and any small seeded stuff, strawberries, we want to see the seed all the way down the pot, not just lumpy at the top, unless it's whole fruit. The label must be 2/3 from the top of the jar. It must say what the main ingredient is, and it must say when it was made. With lemon curd, it must not be any more than 6 weeks old, for obvious reasons. Because if you sell this off at the auction after the show, and somebody gets salmonella, you know, so therefore I suggest, as a lot of shows do with lemon curds now, that they ask the exhibitor to take it away with them, not to leave it to be sold or auctioned off. Because it is a funny situation, but there we go, that's the way the things are today. But always, and you'll see that when I always wear gloves when I cut cakes, bread, jams, and we always do pickles and chutneys first. If you did sweet things first, that'd mess all the chutneys up, wouldn't it, and the pickles. So you always do the pickles and the things with vinegar in, and don't forget there is things which you can't put under the category of pickles or chutneys unless that contain vinegar. This is where a lot of people slip up. Ladies will know, but there's a lot what don't. But the thing is, it's cleanliness, because I've picked up vegetables, I've picked up fruit, I've picked up all sorts of things right throughout when I've been judging. And I come along and I start cutting cakes up. Somebody might want to eat that cake, sausage rolls, cheese straws, and it would be not very nice if you auctioned it off and somebody's had the filthy maulers around it. So I always wear gloves, and I know that they're clean, everything's clean when I've left it. Everything's the same as what it was when I leave it, as when I saw it. And also, try and, if you're going to do cakes, sponges and that, either put them in a container or with cellophane on. Some shows will actually specify that.
Do you, when you're making Victoria sponge, do you have to put a dusting on the top?
Not necessarily, unless
Or
it
leave
states
it-
in the schedule.
or leave
Some
it plain?
some schedules put the because it's an old thing with the WI in it, they will put a recipe in the schedule. A lot of shows do this now. But no, it's not compulsory.
No, so
Unless it's, if it says in the show, Victoria sponge with caster sugar, then that's got to have it.
yeah.
And don't forget it's got to have raspberry jam.
So it doesn't make any difference.
No, none whatsoever. But mustn't have cream in. You get people who have cream in. But no,
No.
you've got to have it. The traditional Victoria sponge.
You know, when your exhibition leaks,
Yeah,
now, I've done the wrong thing this year because I got the onions
yeah,
and you cut the roots off.
yeah.
And I said to Steve, I said, what we got to do with the onion, with the leeks? Have we got to snip them or leave them?
No, leave them.
No, but Steve said, well, he done the right thing. He said, well, Ben's done the onions, do your leeks.
Yeah.
Then, of course, then
Yeah, well, when you do a dressed onion, undressed an onion, we know it's got to have the root on, right, all clean. Now, a leek will be exactly the same with the root on and clean.
Yeah.
Now, when it says dressed onion and shallots, always be careful, because that's another thing what we don't want to see onions which are ready to be cooked. Because a lot of people skin them.
Oh, I done that.
Now, you can skin them too far, and how we know, you can't do anything about it, if you turn upside down, you'll see where the skin has stopped, where the root is. So we know how many layers of skin. Now, sometimes if you've got 3 onions, which are very, very good, leave a bit of skin on.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see onions thinking, cool, they're ready for the pot, they are. Because they won't keep.
Yeah.
But don't overskin onions, and like a leek, don't overskin them. Because we're looking not only for the white, but we're looking for the foliage as well with leeks, especially with pot leeks. But with a little show,
Yeah, well,
that's not so bad. But when you go further up the country, where they have 24-hour security on the allotments garden, and a shotgun at hand and a couple of dogs, very, very seriously.
yeah.
Well, is there any other questions?
Yeah, you know the areas in the show, it doesn't matter the condition, it's just physical weight.
Yeah, yeah. It says in the schedule, heaviest cabbage, it doesn't matter if it's infected with
Yeah. Yeah.
wildlife, as we call it. The marrow, we will weigh, yes. The longest run.
Store, though. I mean,
An inch.
could
an
you go
inch.
as much as, I mean, surely if you had the longest stalk lad, you'd just have a bit more weight, wouldn't it? You know what I mean?
What, half-inch of stalk full of water? Ah, that won't be a fraction of an ounce.
Also with the rudder bean, the longest, is
Yeah.
the bean itself, not the stalk?
No, we measure, if it's got the stalk on, we measure the bean complete with the stalk. So if you can get it with the stalk, it's better. To give you an idea, the longest one I judged this year was 32 inches, which is going for a runner bean. Completely uncookable, I mean, no good to man or beast, but and the other thing what we have to be careful of, that when you get a show bench of flowers or vegetables and you've got wildlife present, we can't say to that person who's brought that cabbage in that that wildlife came from his cabbage. It could have been brought in by the one next door. So this is what you have to be careful. If you open the leaves up of a cabbage and that's fully infected, well, you know he's brought them in. But when you get a flower and it's got an insect on, we'll say like an eerie wig with a dahlia, for argument's sake, how do we know that that guy who's brought that data in, that's his earwig. It could be the one who's next door. So this is another thing we have to be very careful. So you're all happy. So next year we're going to have an absolute brilliant show. Now you've got all the rules and the regulations. They encourage to have more classes and make it, you know, get it all. A lot of allotments associations now are doing a table. So if you, I don't know how many, you might just have the one allotment obviously, but if you're a member of a society which has got several allotments, they will have tables 6 by 4, and they will decorate the table with all produce grown from that allotment. Could be pots of jam from stuff what they've grown in the soft fruit, flowers, as long as it's grown from the allotment. Then the next allotment will do exactly the same thing. They must have no overhang. In other words, you could go as high as you like, but you can't have a leek like that and all the green hanging down. You have the leek standing up. So everything's all standard. And the allotments compete against each other. It's quite interesting when you do these tables. Because there again, you mustn't pick up anything, because they're done in a way that they're all packed together. And some of them are done in a very, very clever way. So if you pick a pot of jam up to look at it and everything caved in, you'd be in dead trouble, wouldn't you?
Are all the jams, are they tasted?
Yeah. Except if I undo one and it's got mould in it, no.
Oh no.
No.
What about a lemon curd?
Taste that as well. And I'm very dubious.
But they can't sell it at the end of the show.
You can do, but it's down to you if you do. Those must be dated,
Yeah.
which
When you say it must be dated, is month and year good enough? Or
6 weeks.
Do you want the actual date itself?
Well, I don't want anything. I'm thinking about safeguarding yourself.
Okay.
Because it shouldn't be any more than 6 weeks old.
Okay.
That's the criteria. What the WI says.
Yes.
For lemon curd.
Yeah. So they should date it, but it's also a good idea to. I mean, the stuff you buy in supermarkets, that's not problem stuff, is it? So it wouldn't matter if that was the Victorian days when that was made. Some of it didn't even got enough strength to get out the pot. But it's safeguarding yourself. A lot of shows will say to an exhibitor who puts one in, would you mind taking it back with you, and don't attempt to try to sell it or give it away. Well, give it away, it's up to you, but a lot of shows will say, please take it back in the nicest possible way. But no, going to your question, yes. We taste pickles and chutneys, all types of cakes, bread, rolls, because how can you tell what it tastes like? And something else what ladies are doing now, which has become quite a bit of fun now, is to make a cake grown from vegetables from their allotment or their garden.
We do that.
Yeah. That's becoming very popular in shows. I did one, tasted one which was beetroot and chocolate. That was gorgeous.
We used the NVS guide for putting together the schedules and so and so. But you referred to the WI's standards.
Well, first of all, the NVS only judge vegetables.
Oh, sorry.
The NVS only judge vegetables. Now, we have a problem, not with the NVS, because I'm a member, I've been a member for many, many years. Some shows will be judged by, we'll say, the NVS. Now, their ruling's completely different to the RHS. So, if you've got a show which is judged by the RHS judge, like myself, and you're working to the schedule of the sizes and differences with the NVS, that doesn't work.
Okay.
Now, with us, we have to do everything. We have to do everything what's put in front of us. everything from walking sticks to gloves to children's handwriting to poetry, paintings. There again, there is things which you look at a painting and you think, what the devil's that? It's unpersonal choice, if you like. Looking at photographs, there's some photographs and you think, what's all that about, you know? But it's difficult for us. This is why on a lot of big shows, when they do that, we have two of us. And the other thing, of course, that we cannot afford to have, or to be seen to have, a favourite colour. Because if we're judging flowers, oh, that's nice, but I don't like yellow, or I don't like red. We can't be seen to do that. We can't obviously say it, and we just don't do it, simple as that.
Okay. What I was going to go on to ask was, can you tell me where I can get hold of the WI guidance?
I've got them as called On With The Show.
On With The Show?
Yeah. I haven't got one with me, but if you get it from the WI, I think that's something like about £15 plus postage.
Okay.
We sell ours for £10 because we buy them obviously in bulk.
Okay.
But it's called On With The Show, and it will give you everything relating to a WI run show, because a lot of shows will have WI judges there and specifically state they've got to be a WI judge. Well, I'm fortunate I am one because I went to their exam system.
Okay.
But you can, it's called On With The Show,
Fine.
and it will tell you when you're organising a show exactly where to start, even from the point of view of the schedule, organising the hall, organising judges. That goes through the whole of the thing of a show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, the point system,
Yeah.
just at each item,
Yeah,
where we find that information.
Roy's got it.
I've got it.
Um,
You can get it
Yeah.
online.
You can, we sell them as well.
yeah, where will I get that from?
RHS.
Nick that one.
You get it off us if you want
Oh.
one.
Have you got one with you?
Yeah,
Oh, how much are they?
£10.
Shan't bother.
Maybe 10p, you might do it.
No, there's a lot of work, and they're printed.
Going to wait for somebody to buy
The
one.
next year for print is due 2018. So it's not something that you will throw away the next few years.
But the handy thing to have, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, it gives you everything. I mean, you're quite welcome to look at this one. It will give you everything what you need to know. Even there's an abbreviation in here how you can detect a vegetable from a fruit.
Get
got
the
all-
photo in.
All the varieties of apples and pears and fruit. So it's a wealth of information. We call it the Bible. That's even got at the back measuring weight system.
Yeah, Morris, I'll rent you mine for a good price.
50-50.
Yeah. Your money's about 10 to 50, isn't it?
But as I say, the next print is due, I think it's 2018. So.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Far on between us.
But we also have this one as well, but that's only for us
Yeah.
on teaching and